Hey, I'm Benjamin Verbicek, and I'm the lead teaching pastor of Community Evangelical Free Church. I'm also the managing editor for Gospel-Centered Discipleship. And this is the 6th installment of what we're calling the Writer's Coaching Corner, where I get in front of a camera and every month I talk about one article, more specifically one paragraph from one article that appeared on our website the previous month. And we talk about what's going on in that paragraph that's so helpful from a writing standpoint, and how we can get some of that writerly goodness into our own prose. And so this month, here's the principle, that good writing results when authors and editors work together for the benefit of readers. So authors and editors working together for the benefit of readers. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. So let me go ahead and just jump us right into the paragraph itself. I'm going to be reading here from an article from Aaron Warner. The title of the article is Dear Church Member, Don't Amputate Yourself from the Body of Christ. We've been running a series of articles about the importance of the local church. And Aaron is a father, and a husband, and he works in manufacturing. And this is his first article he's ever written for Gospel-Centered Discipleship. So I'm thankful to celebrate what's working in that as we talk about authors and editors and working together. And so here's actually not one paragraph, but the opening 2 paragraphs where he sets the stage. He says, I've never been the type of person who enjoys horror thriller movies. If I am going to use what little free time I have enjoying a film, I can assure you that it will not be one riddled with gory images of people screaming and writhing in pain. However, there is one horror movie I can vaguely recall moments from. Saw. I specifically remember a scene where a shackled man was forced to amputate his foot in order to hopefully save his family. The brutal nature of the scene has a way of forcing the viewer to wrestle with what they might do in the same situation. Then he goes on to talk about the importance of every member in the body of Christ, and first celebrating, and I won't read these paragraphs, but the amazing aspect of the human body that we can heal ourselves from cuts and little bruises. Not that we heal ourselves, but God has wired our body to do that. And talking about the body of Christ and the way that in the body of Christ, there's in the gospel ways that we can get healed from little bumps and bruises, and we don't have to go all the way to amputation normally. And so it's a good article, wrestles with all of that. And so I just want to mention, so talk about editing and the process of submitting articles here for GCD. So one of the things we do is when we first receive the article, we find out, okay, is this an article that could be published? And then if so, how much editing might that article need? And so if it needs a little bit of editing, I'll give it that, and then I'll pass it on to one of our associate editors who will do more kind of line editing. And then from there, it'll go to the author, and then back to that editor, and then back to me, where I'll read it again. So the article's read several times, and then it'll go towards publication. All of that takes maybe 1 month if it's short. It could happen in a couple days if we were trying to hit a timeline on something, but normally that's the arc of a couple months, honestly, especially when our calendar's fairly full. And so that's what it looks like. We really value working with the author to edit the article so that it's in good shape. Now, I want to talk about the book of Proverbs here as we think about editing. Here's a few verses I want to read. When you think about the book of Proverbs and what is the big sin in the book of Proverbs, I know there are, 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him. I may be reversing that order of hate and detestable, but the idea that there's specific sins that are named. However, if you just ask the question, what's the big sin that's talked about over and over again in the book of Proverbs, I think it's refusing to be teachable. To have pride and arrogance rather than humility and a teachableness. And here are just a few verses that illustrate that. Proverbs 13:20 says, whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. Proverbs 17:10, A rebuke goes deeper into a man of understanding than 100 blows into a fool. Proverbs 26:12. Do you see a man who is wise in his own eyes? There is more hope for a fool than for him. All of those verses getting at the idea of being teachable and listening to others to get counsel and be wise and to change your course accordingly. So let's go back to Aaron's article. Now, this is kind of a weird one to celebrate because I really do think the core of what Aaron was writing was that the ideas were good. The trouble was the paragraphs and some of the sentence structure individually within those paragraphs needed work. And as most articles do when they come to us, some more than others, some less than others, but they all need work, even the best authors who would write for us. And so I wrote back to Aaron when I had a little time to get to his article and look it through. And here's some of what I said to him. There's an introduction to the email about how I know Aaron, or how Aaron knew us, and I was glad he reached out. But here's what I say. I've been looking more closely at it, meaning your article this morning. I like the ideas you explore in the article, and certainly the concept of amputation is a provocative, intriguing metaphor. Unfortunately, the writing needs more work before I can put it into the publication cycle. I'd be happy to assign one of our editors to work with you on developmental editing, but I'm not sure if that's something you'd be interested in. If you'd like to pass, I totally understand. So that's the email I sent to Aaron, not knowing how he would respond. I mean, there are some people, and I understand why they might feel this way, say, okay, this is how I wrote it, this is how it pretty much needs to be. I'm going to submit it somewhere else, or I'm going to put it on my own blog. That's a fine response, perhaps. But thankfully, this is how Aaron responded, in the sense of thankfully GCD had a good article out of it on our website. But Aaron responds, I was actually hoping it would be reviewed by an editor for development. I know that I'm not the greatest writer, and it is one of the reasons I decided to submit something. I wanted to be encouraged and grow as a writer, so I could think of nothing better than to have an editor look over it and help me see where I can grow and how to take a message and make it stronger. Now, when I heard that, I thought, all right, let's go. You know, this is a good thing. And so out of that, several emails over a couple months, and truthfully, Aaron was so gracious to us as GCD, not just to receive feedback, but there was a little goof in how I assigned it to one editor and that not working out. Nothing to do with the editors that are still here, but there was a changeover in personnel, and so there was a gap on that, and Aaron was very gracious to me, and so I ended up jumping in with him more, and we worked together to get this article in the place where it was close to publication, and then another editor worked with it more to get it even closer, and then back to me and back to the editor, or excuse me, the author. So anyway, all that to say, it was a process. One that Aaron was excited about, and I'm so thankful he was. That's not, I will say, how I've always felt when I've been edited. Years ago when I was first getting started to submitting articles for publication, I was working with my co-pastor who was a phenomenal guy and has a background in English at an education level, like master's work and college. Degree is related to English and teaching and education. So he was more than qualified to edit my little blog post. And we were going through them, and then we came to one week, and he looked at one and said, you know what, hey, Benjamin, this one's better. You should think about getting this published somewhere else. And I thought, okay, I don't know all that means. I've not done much of that at that point. And so I emailed it to a few other friends. Okay, let me get more feedback. And in the process, I had a connection at the Gospel Coalition. And so here's the article where it came out. It said, this is my first real article. I had written a book review before, but this is When Ministry Success Becomes an Idol, April 22nd, 2005, and 2015. And there's the article. But before it got to TGC's website, I reached out to a number of people, got feedback, and they're like, this is good, this is bad, but here, make this better. And then I remembered there's a guy, Charles, who at the time was working for the Gospel Coalition in one specific capacity, and I said, I'm going to ask Charles what to do. And he sent me back, and here's the screenshot of the Word document. And I won't call it red ink because it's blue using the track changes feature here, but I just looked at that and I thought, I don't even know where to start. I was so deflated, so discouraged. I thought, apparently I'm not called to be a writer. I've never written anything true or helpful in my life, and maybe I never will. And I closed it. And I remember right where I was sitting actually when this happened. And so I walked away. And a few days later, I look at it closer. I'm like, okay, those are some good edits, and I've got a lot to learn. And so anyway, I feel the weight of what it means to be edited, but there is a real goodness to being edited. Now 7 years later, 6 years later, I've written for various publications, 75 articles over the last 5 or 6 years, and I've been edited a lot. And now I will say some of the places, they take my articles and they don't edit a word. I will tell you, I've come to the place where I realize I'm kind of frustrated by that. I know my articles need to be better, and I'm glad they're publishing them, but I want that feedback. And so at GCD, if you publish with us, you submit, you're going to get that feedback, and we're going to do our best, not just to produce good content, but to help you as a writer become a better writer. And that makes me think of, so this is a Twitter exchange back and forth I had with Hannah Anderson earlier in the year. I said, hey, thanks for leading a segment of the Gospel-Centered Discipleship Writers Cohort last fall. So this is now a year ago in the fall. She led a segment. That's a program we have. It's 6 months. You pay to get in it, and you get mentoring for 6 months on your writing with 11 or 12 other writers. And I said, in that cohort, I took your advice to submit to somewhere new. So I'd never submitted to Phantom Mag before. All because she said, the real goal is not to be published, to be edited. And I think there's real truth to that our goal as writers, there's a goodness to being published, but the real goodness is to be edited by good editors. And so I took her advice, and that was a sweet thing. And in that exchange, we went back and forth, and then she had this to say, as someone else chimed in. She says, yes to the latter. I won't go into that tweet thread, but she says, writers should seek out the process for learning, the process of publication, pitching, and being published, for learning and correction as much as for exposure. This positions them to be more receptive to editors' corrections and advice, less defensive, etc. And so I took that advice. I'd love for you to be taking that advice as well. So I'm going to break this video into 2 segments, because there's so much to talk about when we talk about editing. In the next video, I'm going to talk about the different kinds of editing. For example, there's developmental, substantive content editing. Then there's structural editing. Then there's copy editing. Then there's line editing. Then there's mechanical editing. Then there's what we normally just call proofreading when we say, hey, will you proofread this? We usually don't just mean proofread. We actually mean some of that other types of editing. And so I want to come back next month and talk about all those different types of editing. But before I do that, I want to give you 2 resources. One is this book, The Subversive Copy Editor, subtitled Advice from Chicago. It's published by University of Chicago Press. It's a great book by Carol Fisher Saller. The subtitle, this is a book with like a second subtitle, is The Subversive Copy Editor, or How to Negotiate Good Relationships with Your Writers, Your Colleagues, and Yourself. Let me read just a quote here from page 5. Regardless of your modus operandi, when you start in on the process, so this is written to editors, when you as an editor start in on the process of reading the words and making editorial decisions, you are going to work for someone. You'll be vying for that person's approval and striving to meet his or her standards. And that person is the one who hired you? Nope. The writer? Not entirely. Yourself? Not even close. Your ultimate boss is the reader. You, your boss, and your boss's boss all work for the same person. And you all have the same goal of making that person's reading experience the best it can be. And so the idea there gets at what the principle I wanted to be talking about during this segment, which is that good writing results when authors and editors work together for the benefit of the reader, which is why oftentimes in the track changes feature there on Microsoft Word, I'll be writing the comment, will readers understand this point? Okay? What I mean by that is I'm saying, like, I could say, I don't understand this point, but what I'm trying to say is, will readers understand this point? Which is a way to say that you and I, me in this setup as an editor and you as the author, we're working together so that readers can understand what's going on best in that article. So final resource, I like to usually give two. This one, you forgive me for the shameless plug, but it does relate a little bit to editing. Shepherd Sheep, Essays on Loving and Leading in a Local Church by Benjamin Verbacek. So while I was on sabbatical this summer, I put together a collection of essays for especially for my local church. There are a bunch of things I've written over the years on pastors and shepherds and sheep, how we relate well, not just together in the same church, but how we relate well under the care of the Good Shepherd. And so, collection of 25 essays I wrote. If you're interested in it, I'd love for you to check it out. All of these essays were vetted by different websites, and even then, many of them, as I was putting together this collection of essays, I paid a professional editor to edit them again. And then I used beta readers. And so that's an option for you if you want to work with pitching something to a website or even a publisher, a book proposal. Just encourage you to get a professional editor and then beta readers. Both of them can serve different purposes and work together with you as an author to produce words that are the best they can be for that reader, and then ultimately in a Christian context for the Lord. So thanks for watching this edition of the Writer's Coaching Corner. Come back next month and I'll finish this and we'll talk more about editing and how to do that well for God's glory and our good. Thanks for watching.